In this episode, I want to discuss a little bit workflow management. And of course, if you have an idea how you want to work, you will find maybe the software that fits to your workflow, and you find maybe the software that fits to you, because you shouldn't fit to the software. It's the other way around that makes sense, at least to me. What I have here is an placeholder, so to say, but it's pretty much always exactly the same. We have, when we shoot an HDRI panorama, most of the time to deal with the exposure series, and this would be here in this example the horizontal direction, and then down we have the direction, because we move the camera to get other content inside of the frame. So this is pretty much a placeholder for everything. The smallest one would be maybe 3x3. It could be smaller, but 3x3 sounds the most familiar to me. 3 fisheye shots, 3 exposures, 3 directions. That's maybe exactly here, that middle field. And then we can have many more exposures up and down. And the longer the lenses, the more direction we need to shoot to get finally our panorama in the way we want to have it. So this can be smaller, this can be larger, and in both direction independently. 3 exposures but 50 directions, or maybe 12 exposures and only 3 directions, whatever you like. So we have, for example, 3 main options to organize our workflow here. And let's start with one, and that's maybe the most work intensive, but also the most precise and the most careful version, I would think that. That means we go first exposure series by exposure series. So we get for each direction one HDRI, and let's say we get sometimes only an MDRI, medium dynamic range. LDRI would be then for low dynamic range when we have only one exposure, just to clear the terms. So we get here from this example maybe 5 different directions, and then we create from this our panorama, just like that. So we have the option to go first in each shot and maybe fix something that was not okay. Then we have the option to go into our exposure merged in the HDRI or MDRI and fix again something if there's a ghost in it or something like that. And then we have our panorama done, and the panorama can be, of course, fixed after that. So that's a very careful step-by-step approach. The next one is similar but goes in the opposite direction. First we go here to our LDRI, to the mid dynamic range, not medium dynamic range, to this standard shot that we would normally do when we would shoot only LDRI. And we create a panorama out of it. We save exactly this panorama as template, for example in PTGui. There might be other options, there might be other softwares. I focus here on the one that I have used in the past years more than any other of the available softwares. And I have used in the last 13-14 years quite some. So what I want to discuss here is that we have a panorama and we have a template. So we can check the panorama from the start. If it works for our needs, we get an idea how large it is, which quality it has, which problems it has. If the template is then done, we can say we load another row of images into it, 1 exposure down, 2 exposure downs, or up, and each time we apply the template. So the application has no need to render or to set tracking points again and again. And so we get another one, another one, another one, another one, and so on until we have done all the different rows in our folder. And from there we go then and create finally an HDRI. The problem is that it might not align so perfectly. It might, if we have shot very carefully, work very nicely, But it has, of course, some very weird behaviors, because we have then a lot of panoramas and we merge them everything in one step. When I say weird, that's my personal opinion. If you like to shoot in that way, there's nothing wrong with that, and it has the advantage that you see from the start if that panorama works or not. To go first into all these HDRI, MDRIs, and then on the end you see if it works or not, is maybe a little bit more dangerous. Of course, what I do normally, I shoot always with a little sidecar, so to say, the JPEGs, and I use one JPEG row here and create from the start a pano. So I mix maybe both approaches here. The last one, and I make maybe here a stroke and here a stroke, the last one is that we take all these images and we do not adjust anything. And we take it right into, for example, Petit GUI. And I don't want to make here advertisement for this application, but this is really the one that is in use in many studios, and so I feel comfortable to make a little advertisement here. The only downside of this solution is I would not do it when you have shot freehand or manual. This is something where I have always the feeling that's a little bit too dangerous, because Petit GUI has, of course, a lot of options to align things, but there's, for example, no deghosting in it, at least while I'm recording. So this would be, of course, then the solution here for HDRI first, because the deghosting would work then. Same here, the deghosting would work here as well, but all in one, that's most of the time maybe for indoor rooms, for areas where nothing is really moving, then this approach works nicely. And of course, it's absolutely comfortable. It's very nice when you say, okay, I track all these pictures to Petit GUI, and maybe I have even 20 or 30 of them. I can batch render this, and then I go home, and overnight everything is fine. And the next morning, perhaps, you have all your panoramas neatly in a folder, and you have only the option to check if everything is fine or not. So we have three main areas. The one, first exposures, then panorama. The other one, first all the rows and then the HDRI, or all at once. And each and everything has a little bit of a problem and an advantage as well, because it needs to fit to you, and when it fits to you, then the biggest advantage is given there. As a little side note, or as a postscriptum outside of this discussion, is of course that we will see in the future more and more cameras that can shoot HDRI directly, as we can see this already with the Red camera, where we can shoot images with 18 stops, and that is in many cases really sufficient. And that would create then finally this version here, because we don't have to merge this. We go just with all the HDRIs directly into the panorama, which is of course done as well with Petit GUI here, for example. Anyway, please check out all the other panorama applications, because some of them are really worth to have a look to it. Make certain that any panorama stitching application, when you want to go maybe this route here, that it can digest 32-bit per channel. That's important when you want to go this route here. You can use even older panorama applications with this route, and then we need only 8 or 16-bit, because we talk always about a low dynamic range image, and then it can be even an integer. And that is then 8 or 16-bit per channel as well. I hope this little discussion was helpful for you and supports your next steps. Please explore other applications and workflows and options. There's always improvement available, and the more you try and test, and the more you get into one area and compare from there, the better you will have finally your certainty in your own workflow, because it is always subject to change. Thanks for listening. Have fun with it. Bye bye.